My 100 level health and wellness class, activities where they film themselves for 2 minutes and they load that film. So I thought we might give that a try. We've got 3 labs on the syllabus today, and with one of them you won't be able to do definitely at home. So we'll just talk about, we'll talk through that one. But then I thought you could maybe give the other 2 a try, film yourself and put that up, and then it'll feel a little bit more like hopefully you're engaged in a lab scenario. Because this is difficult. Labs, you know, the classes are going okay. I can't say I enjoy teaching to the camera, but I feel like the classes are going okay, but the labs, it's really difficult to know how to approach these labs for you so that they're meaningful to you. The labs that are on the schedule are Lab 21, which is a vertical jump test, Lab 22, I believe. 22 is a long jump test, and then 23 is the one you won't be able to do because you have to have a weighted medicine ball and quite a lot of space. So if you happen to have that, go ahead and give it a try, but I'm assuming that the majority of people won't be able to have a go at Lab 23. So we're doing a vertical jump, a long jump, and a heavy ball toss. All right? So what we've got to do is tie this back to class. All right? We haven't started the muscular system yet. That's coming up, I think starts Friday. But which energy system do you think these 3 activities are going to utilize? Which energy system is going to be making ATP for a vertical jump, a long jump, and a ball toss? All right, so think of it in timeline. I always think that's the easiest way to approach this question. All right? How long does it take to do one vertical jump?
Couple of seconds, maybe?
Couple of seconds, right. So then, which system is predominant during the first couple of seconds of moving?
ATP.
ATP, PC, but you probably don't even get to needing to break down phosphocreatine for 2 seconds. You can probably manage on ATP that's just stored in the muscle tissue, right? Now, if you do repetitive vertical jumps, probably you'll start breaking down phosphocreatine and resynthesizing ATP. All right? So this is high intensity, short duration, anaerobic ATP-PC system. Right? So you already knew 4 things about these activities if you can start to think that way, right? What do I know? What's happening in 2 seconds? Okay? When we look at the muscular system, you'll see, we'll talk about which fiber type would be utilized for a vertical jump. Okay? So a couple of things. So it's important, I think, since we're not in class, that you read through the workbook, the worksheets very carefully, right? A couple of things about a vertical jump. If you read the procedures carefully, they tell you to pause at the bottom of the squat, all right? So that's important, and we haven't talked about it yet, but it will come into play in class. We'll talk more and more about this idea, right? When we are using this assessment, we are assessing the power that the muscle is able to generate, all right? When you watch jumping in basketball, and sometimes if you're doing vertical jumps with your coaches, they'll let you do, can you see me at the moment in the camera?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they'll let you do this, right? They'll let you step, bounce, jump. Okay? Because in a lot of sports situations, that's the functionality of a vertical jump. Okay? But the problem with that is when you do that, or if you bend and jump very quickly, we incorporate something that is often called the stretch reflex. And the stretch reflex adds power to the jump, okay? So when you're reading this, you'll see that they tell you to pause and then jump, because they're trying to knock out the impact of the stress of the stretch reflex. What the vertical jump assessment is looking at is the power that the quadriceps and the legs can generate on their own, right? Because that's the thing we can effect with a training program, right? Stretch reflex is a stretch reflex. I can't really train. I mean, I can train it a little bit, but mostly it's going to happen in its own time, right? But I can make the muscle stronger so that we have more power, right? Remember that power is strength and speed. So we want to put those two things together. All right? The other thing to note on this particular workbook is that they're assuming that you do not have a vertical jump board in your gym, right? So they have you do some other measurements to make it a little bit more validated. I could be wrong, I often am, but in my view, if you have a vertical jump board where you can measure on the board how many inches or how many centimeters were jumped, then you don't necessarily need all these additional tape measures that they have you make here. Right? Does that make a little bit of sense? I think it'll make more sense when you actually read the workbook. Okay? And then they have a nomogram. So when you look here, they've got this kind of chart with lines in it that you can work out kind of power here. All right? Depending on how easily you're able to try the vertical jump. You know, here's the thing. I'm not, the participation for today and the lab for today will be your piece of film, right? Not a workbook like it was the other week, right? But it's always, the more you use the information, the more you play with the information, the more of the activities you do, the better you'll understand how the assessment works, what the assessment is showing you. All right? Question. No? Okay. Lab 22 is a standing long jump. So, instead of driving just down into the floor, right? If you remember your biomechanics, if I'm going to jump straight upwards, that means I'm applying pressure directly downwards, and the floor is pushing me back straight up, right? When we do a long jump, the mechanics are a little bit different because I have to push down and back, and the floor is going to push up and forward. The other thing about a long jump is if I'm strong enough and brave enough to move my center of gravity outside my base of support, I'll be able to jump further. Right? But it's scary because you don't want to land on your face. Right? So on our long jump, we want to lean and reach. Okay? Theoretically, what's the best angle of takeoff for length? Anybody remember from physics or biomechanics? Did I stump here with that one? So for distance, right, the ultimate angle of takeoff would be 45 degrees, right? But you're not really going to get someone to take off at an angle of 45 degrees. So we're always working with an angle that's not quite optimal. Okay? The more I can lean, the longer the jump will be if my legs are strong enough to cope with the lean. Okay? So both these jumping assessments you are assessing power, all right? So they're both using ATPPC. They're both anaerobic, all right? And if I can make my athlete stronger, then I should see increase in height, increase in length. Okay? Can't change speed very much. We can train the brain to turn on more of the faster muscle type if the person has them, but I can't make the muscle faster than it is. Okay, and we'll get to that later in the week and next week. Okay. The third lab is one I always find rather weird. It's a test of total body power. That's how it's been validated. And all these assessments in this workbook are validated, right? They're scientifically shown to measure what they say they measure. I wish they would give us a little bit more of the technique on this one. So on this one, you use a medicine ball that is 3 kilos, so nearly 7 pounds, right? And you stand with your back facing the tape measure, and you drop the ball and throw the ball backwards. Okay? So there are a couple of things I think to think about there. If you have a student who has very, very tight shoulders, right, and they can't put their hands behind their head, then when they do this, I don't want to drop the ball on my head, right? I'm going to end up in the hospital. So when they do this, what you'll see is they have to arch a lot to get the ball past their head because they can't get their hands past their head. Right? So I think a couple of things. It's worth watching for that, because you don't want someone to hurt their back arching it like that. So you may have to do a little bit more work on shoulder flexibility before you can use this assessment well. Right? Again, the optimal point of release would be 45 degrees. Again, that's not going to really be happening. So we're working with a less than optimal angle of release mechanically. And what I have seen when we do this in person is that the people who have a lot of upper body mass, muscle mass, unless their technique is very bad, tend to be the ones who can throw the ball further than someone who maybe is a sprinter and has heaps of power in their legs and do a great vertical jump and a great long jump, but they don't carry as much muscle mass in their upper body. Remember, it's looking at total body power, and so they don't do as well on this ball throw as they did on the vertical jump, right? Anecdotally, that's what I see when we do this, right? All three of these assessments involve a lot of technique. So one caution that you need to pay attention to is you should not introduce the assessment and measure the person's power straight away, right? You don't say, oh, today we're going to do vertical jumps, this is what you do, okay, let me measure you. Right? You have to teach the individuals how to do the assessment, how to do the skill, before you measure their power. Right? So for example, the vertical jump always gives me the heebie-jeebies. A, power is not my thing. B, I'm always really nervous that I'm going to lean and smack my head against the wall, right? So I'm not sure if you tested me that I'd really give it my full attempt, because I don't want to hit my head on the wall, right? So I need to practice this skill quite a lot. I have to practice bending and waiting and then jumping. Right? On the long jump, I've got to practice using my arms as well as my legs and leaning a little bit if I can. On the medicine ball, we've got to work on shoulder flexibility. Right? They all involve a lot of technique, and what you don't want to do is run your pre-test, right? Your pre-assessment, take their measure, give them a couple of weeks working on this and working on their specific strength for this drill, and then do your post measure and have this huge improvement that now I don't know, was that improvement because I made them stronger, or was that improvement because their technique got better? Right? The assessment isn't meant to be testing technique, it's testing power. So I have to know that what I'm measuring is a change in power, not a change in technique. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah? You know, depending on the level of athlete or the experience of the mover that you're working with, some people are going to pick this technique up quickly. Some people may already have done this assessment with in their previous school or with their previous coach, right? And so they already know how to do it. But I think it's important that caution is important to pay attention to, because I want to know exactly how much power improved based upon the strengthening program that I did. Right? So, I think that's all I've got for you. I haven't put up little participation assignments yet for you to put these film in. I will do that. I have to go to the supermarket, then I'll go home, then I'll get those up for you. With the workbook stuff, you know, really you just want to keep plodding away at it. I mean, you could leave it all until the end of the semester and then do all your workbook at the same time, but I wouldn't do that. A, you'll forget how it related back to the information in class. And B, you're going to give yourself a lot to do at the end of the semester when you're going to be working on final projects and exams and things. So try to keep up with it as we go along. That would be my suggestion. I know it's easy when we're at home and we're not in school to kind of feel I've got all the time in the world to get this done, so I can just go play with the dog instead, right? But I think try as best you can to stay on task and keep up to date with everything, and that will make the end of the semester a little less onerous for you. Okay? Anybody got questions for me?
Oh, ma'am, I think I'm good.
No? Okay. I do have office hours from 1 till 3 today, so if you think of something that maybe I didn't explain very well, or maybe I forgot to explain, then by all means please jump into office hours and ask me. We're starting a new chapter tomorrow. Hint, hint. So, okay. I will see you tomorrow afternoon.